Okay, so this is video part 4 for regarding the simple animation rig. Okay, so now I'm gonna introduce you to what we call constraints, and there are certain types of constraints. The one that I'm gonna show is the point constraint, and its use case, why we need it, and yeah. Anyhow, so I made these last time we left off. We made the animation controllers, and their purpose is so that they're gonna be linked to your clusters, so that these animation controllers will control these small, tiny looking clusters, right? And it just kind of sucks to go in and select the clusters from the outliner. So that's the whole point of these animation controllers. But in order for the animation controllers to manipulate the clusters, right, in which the clusters manipulate the lattice, okay, I need to set up my constraint. Right, so that's the explanation of why. Now let's show how. First, make sure you're in animation menu set. Okay. And there's a important thing is your selection order. What you select first. So I wrote it down. First, you select your controller. I'm gonna grab my stretch controller. Then you're gonna select its corresponding cluster, which is this guy. And I believe it's this one. So you select your controller, then your cluster. I'm gonna hold down, make sure you have your outliner. I'm gonna hold down Control, and I'm gonna select this. Cluster 1. That's that guy right there. Alright. So, like I said, first select your controller, right? Then also your cluster, okay, which I held down Control to grab it. Okay. Then you're gonna do a point constraint. Go up here, constraint, point. And watch what happens. You're gonna look here. Okay, watch what happens. Constraint, point. Point constraint means it's up and down, left and right. So I'm gonna do it. See what it did? This means that blue means that there is a constraint happening. But constraint to what? Well, it's constrained to the cluster. Right? So if I grab my cluster, right? If you look at here, it has a little plus sign. And there it is. This says cluster handle point constraint 1. That's what this red icon is. It means that this cluster, right, which was, if you remember, manipulating the lattice points, right? Now this cluster, its X, Y, and Z, up and down, left and right movement is being controlled by I'm selecting my stretch controller. Let me hide my grid. Right. That cluster is now being controlled by my stretch controller. So watch this. Grab my stretch controller and boom, boom, boom. Okay. Can rotate. Oh, my rotation hasn't been constrained either. I mean, hasn't been constrained yet. But up and down is. See? My stretch controller is not highlighted in colors. Okay. Only the cluster has it highlighted, which tells us that, hey, that my translate X, Y, and Z is now linked, dynamically linked to my controller. Okay, the cluster is now linked by a point constraint. Point constraint, like I said, is your X, Y, and Z. That's all it is. It's X, Y, and Z, it's cluster, right? It's now being controlled by the animation controller. Okay, that's what that is, the whole purpose. So like I said, you select your controller first, then your cluster, then you do your point constraint. So I explained that, right, as use case. But now I also want to do a scale constraint and an orient constraint, right? So what do you mean by that? Scale, I want my stretch controller to scale. And I want my stretch controller to also rotate my clusters, right? Because right now it's only limited to my up and down. It's not much. So I will show you how to do that. So again, you have to follow the proper selection order. You select the controller. Then in my outliner, I'm going to hold on Control. Okay, hold on the Control key. I'm going to select my cluster, right? Which already has my point constraint. Then I'm going to go up here, Constraint. I'm going to do a Orient constraint, right? In my Word document it says Scale constraint and then an Orient, but that doesn't matter. You know, I'm just going to do an Orient constraint. After that, I'll do my Scale constraint. Okay. As you can see, it's highlighted in blue. And if you look here, I have your Orient constraint. So that means that my cluster and its rotations, its orientation, which means your rotations, is now being commandeered by my stretch controller. Right? If I do this, there it is. So that is your orient constraint in action. Okay. But I also want to do a scale constraint. I select my controller. I go into my outliner and I hold on Control. I grab my cluster 1 handle. And I'm going to attach a scale constraint. Boom. See it highlights in blue? So now, when I grab my controller, I can scale, I can rotate, I can move. Okay? So that's how we do that. Okay. Then I need to do the same thing. Ignore this for now. I need to do the same thing for my bottom controllers, right? So do the same for bottom controller, right? Okay, do the same for the bottom controller. So remember, you grab your controller first. Then I need to grab my cluster, which is my bottom cluster. Okay, same thing. Constraint, point constraint. Now, when I grab the squash controller, I can squash it. I can pull it. Okay. Same thing. Grab my controller because we're not done yet. I want to crack this open so I can show you that the point constraint has been applied. Grab my squash controller, hold on Control, and click on my cluster, right, the bottom one, cluster 2, right, depending on which one you did what. Okay. Then constraint, orient constraint. And as you can see, the cluster, right, the cluster handle has a point constraint and a orient constraint. So that means that my squash controller, it commandeered, you know, the cluster's ability to rotate and stuff. So I grab my squash controller, now I can rotate. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to select my squash controller again, hold on Control, click on cluster 2. I want it to scale now. I want my controller, my squash controller, to scale. Constrain, scale. As you can see, this is my cluster 2, right? It has a scale constraint as well now. Has my point, has my orient, has my scale. Now if I grab it, I can scale it, I can rotate it, I can pull it. Alright? So we did that. Yeah. Now I need to create a parent and a scale constraint for my center of gravity. Because my center of gravity, right, it does nothing. Yeah, it does absolutely nothing. So what we're gonna do is, okay. Alright, so I had to pause the video for a slight bit. Yeah. So regarding the center of gravity, that you know, it's not manipulating anything. So I need to grab my center of gravity controller. I'm gonna go on my outliner, hold down control. Okay. Then I'm gonna select my mesh. See? Then I'm gonna go to constraint. I'm gonna do what we call a parent constraint. So that does for the translate and rotate. After that, I'm going to do also a scale. So I did not deselect anything. I'm just going to go constraint, scale. So now, it's not gonna, there's going to be some things that's not going to work. So just, you know, FYI, okay. Alright, but yeah, this, at least it does this for now. So we're going to fix this part. Alright, so we did that. Next. Alright, so I paused the video for a bit and I typed this in here. This is your parenting. And I'll explain why we need parenting and what parenting is. As you can see, right, if I move my COG, it moves, but these guys, this controller and this controller, it does not follow. It cannot follow because there's nothing to link it, nothing for it to piggyback on top of the parent. I mean, yeah, the parent, which would be their center of gravity, you know. So there's nothing for these guys, you know, to be able to piggyback off of him. Okay. And the parenting will allow for it to piggyback, for these little guys to piggyback on top of him. When he moves, the little guys will move. Right? And the way we're gonna do that is called parenting. You're gonna grab your stretch controller. And then after that, you're also gonna grab the center of gravity. So I can select my stretch controller, hold down shift, and then select, drag select my center of gravity. Okay, see how my center of gravity turns green? That means that, you know, I selected it the right way, the right order. Okay, so you select your stretch controller, then hold on shift, and also select your parent controller, which would be your COG controller. Okay, because your COG will be the parent. Right? Then you're just going to hit P for parent. If you look here, the COG, and inside of it has the stretch controller. So the stretch controller is piggybacking off of the COG controller. Now, see, this is doing this, which is fine, right? But as you can see, the top controller is highlighted in green and it's also moving. Okay, now I'm gonna select for bottom one. I'm gonna grab the squash controller, and then I'm gonna select the COG. So I'm gonna hold on Shift. I'm gonna select the COG. Okay. Then I'm gonna hit parent. As you can see now, my COG controls my squash, and it also controls my stretch, and it also controls my squash. So these two guys are piggybacking off of him. This is what parenting is. Alright? Yeah, there you go. Okay. Alright, so we're almost done. Now, I'm just gonna highlight it in red so that we know that we did it. Highlight that. Alright, so this is the last part right here. We're gonna grab the following, okay? And I'll tell you why. So when I select this, when I move it, watch it get destroyed. See? This was very bad. In order to fix that, what we need to do is grab the FFD1, right? Okay, that one right there. Not him, him. The base. Okay, base. And then both clusters. I'm going to close and close. I'm going to grab, well, you can hold on Shift or you can hold on Control, whichever. Grab him and him, right? So grab both clusters. Once you grab all three, you're gonna go, best way to do is go into your outliner. Now, once you have those selected, right, press and hold your middle mouse button. I repeat, press and hold your middle mouse button, which is your scroll wheel. Press and hold it. And now you're gonna drag it and drop it into your COG controller. Right? So now your COG controller, what just happened is where all these guys are piggybacking off of your COG controller. So your stretch, your squash, your lattice, right? Lattice D1 base, FFD1 base. Him only. Leave him alone, leave him alone. Then you have your clusters, top and bottom clusters, also piggybacking off of your COG. Alright, so I had to pause the video for a tad. It's a small typo where I said to grab the FFD1 base, right, and the clusters, and I had put them into your mesh. This should be put them into your COG controller. Okay, so yeah, doesn't mean that we change anything. It's just a typo. So we did that, right? And lastly, just one more thing, and this part is super important as well. You're gonna grab these guys, your FFD1 base and your clusters, right? Then in here, make a display layer for it. Okay. And I'll type over here, do not animate. Save. Set to reference. Oh. This is the same thing. This lattice, right? See that? And this is the same one. So, for example, the one that I made it out of lattice. Oh, that's that. Is it? Let me see this. 1 second. Let me just double check. Right. Okay, good. Forget that. Forget about what I said about the lattice. Meaning, do what we just did, right? Where you grab the FFD1 base and the clusters, and you click here, and you made the... Whoa, what the hell was that about? Okay. What the hell was that? Is that a glitch? Alright, that was a glitch. Whatever. So, yeah. We grab do not animate. Just label as do not animate. And in here, just to make sure, right click on it, select objects. As you can see, just to confirm, it grabbed the things we wanted. Okay. And these guys will not be animatable. That's the reason why I put R set as a reference. You do not want the clusters to be animated or the lattice FFD1 base, right? Because these guys, they're under your COG, okay? So basically, I'm gonna unclick that. So let's say you're animating, right? And I grab all the controllers. See what happens? I also end up grabbing the clusters. Well, maybe I didn't grab the FFD1 base, but I sure as hell grab the clusters. I do not want to grab the clusters because I do not want to set a keyframe on the clusters. Hence, I said to grab these guys and then make a display layer for it set to reference. That way, when you select all the controllers, right, you see that the C for cluster is highlighted, but it does not mean that the clusters in here are highlighted. As you can see, only the controllers are selected, and I can safely set keyframes, right? So that's that part, right? So I'm gonna go here, boom and boom, right? That part, and then this part right here, where I mentioned about you know, putting into a display layer, right? Right. So I did that. Okay, so we did that. All right. So quick review. All right. I'm gonna hide everything. Okay. Here's my geo, the mesh. All right. I can go in here, also select it through here because right now it's set to reference. It has my constraints. Press 3 for a smooth mesh preview. Right. Inside of my asset, my mesh, I have my constraints. Right. So this mesh, it's constrained to him, my COG. Okay, and I set my asset geometry to reference, so I can't select it accidentally. I do not want to animate the mesh, right? This is my lattice. I'm gonna right click on it, select objects. This is my FFD1 lattice, not my FFD1 base, okay? I also set it to reference, just in case so I don't animate it. I could just set it to hide as well, alright? But for sure, set it to reference. This here, right click on it, select objects. It selected FFD1 base, also the clusters, right? Here it is. Also set this to reference, and you could hide it. Do not animate. Okay. So that's that part. And that's pretty much everything. And I tested it out, right? So this is 25 minutes, so it's a longer video of all of them, but here's the test animation. No, that's not it. 1 second. Right, I'm gonna go File, Open. So this is a test animation. As you can see, it has everything that I mentioned, right? It has this here, right, that I just mentioned, right? Where it's set to reference, okay? And here is it animated. See? Boom, boom. So this is a newer animation, right? Because the other one is here that I did for the demo, okay? So I just remade it again, right? Just to show that it works, okay? It works, good, good. There you go. All right, so that's pretty much everything. Yeah. File, open. All right, 1 second. So we did all of that. Do not animate. This is the other lattice. Okay. You know what? Just to make sure, I'm gonna name it FFD1 lattice. Okay. FFD1 lattice. Save. Okay. Yeah. So that's everything. All right. Yeah. Bye.